sky's not blue.
Welcome back to the Cult House Podcast. I am your host, the Scholar of Spite and the Saturday Night Delight, Roger Riddell. Joining me today, he's a drummer whose bands have included Sun Don't Shine, Typo Negative, Quiet Riot, Silvertomb, and Seventh Void. Johnny Kelly. How are you doing today, Johnny?
How are you?
Pretty good. Where are you at these days?
I'm outside of Dallas. I'm a Texan. Yeah,
Nice. Yeah, so
yeah.
I guess you got sick of Brooklyn after a lifetime up there.
I escaped Brooklyn like almost 30 years ago, and
Oh, okay.
I moved to Staten Island. I lived there for 13 years. Then I lived in Jersey for like 5 years, something like that. And then 7 years in Jersey, and then moved down to Texas 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I moved down here for my wife.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Love it.
Yeah, no,
Love it.
I've never
Yeah.
been to Dallas, but I've been to Austin a few times, and I've always liked the vibe of that city. Like it's got a good sort of like Southern arts vibe, kind of like a bigger version of like Richmond or Louisville.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've been to Austin, but never really I've only been there, quick visits, doing shows. Never spent a lot of time down there.
Yeah, no, I've the only
Yeah.
other place in Texas I've been to is San Antonio. And it's funny walking outside the Alamo. They've got that wall around it now that has like the hours that you can go in there. And it's like they should have thought of just putting this wall up with these hours a few hundred years ago, and they wouldn't have had that whole Alamo battle thing, the issue with it.
Well, they probably wouldn't have had the issue of Ozzy peeing on it either. Could have avoided that whole thing.
Yeah. So yeah,
Oh,
you've
actually, the last time I was down there, when did they put a wall around it? I know that they were doing some. Last time I was there, they were doing some renovations, like kind of like recreating the whole thing instead of it just being the small little structure,
yeah, I was down there in 2023 in like February, and they had
right?
this like wall up now, and there's like these hours of visitation, and then there's this gate that's closed on it.
Yeah. Well, somebody screwed up, and then they had to make rules about it. You can't have anything nice. That's
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what happened. Somebody did something stupid, and then it was like, all right, now you're going to ruin it for everybody else.
Too many people asking to visit the basement or showing up to pee on it in tribute to Ozzy.
Well, sure, it wasn't like coming to make a donation.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you've got your current band Sun Don't Shine with Kenny from Typo as well as Kirk Winstein and Todd Strange from Crowbar and
Yes,
Down. How did that all come about?
that was the brainchild of our buddy Drew. Drew met Drew. He was a merchandiser for Danzig, and he came on. He was doing merch on the tour that Kenny played guitar for Danzig in. And Kenny did one tour with Danzig, playing guitar, and it was a short trip. It was Jesus at this point now, like almost 20 years ago. It's got to be like 17, 18 years ago, something like that. And we all became fast friends, and then after that tour, Type O was going out, and we hired Drew to come do merch for Type O. And since then, we've remained close friends and stuff. And Drew always would, while we were hanging out, whatever, drinking and stuff like that, he'd be like, it'd be great if you two got together with Kirk and Todd from Crowbar and, did something. Yeah. Fast forward, years later, Andrew's starting his own label, Crosspaint Records. And he reaches out to us and he's like, we're going to make this happen. And he got us all to a studio in Florida. And we came up with the first song that we did, Dreams Always Die with the Sun. And from there, it just kept on building. And we did that. We put that out. We shot a video for it and stuff. And then we got together a few months later. Came up with a batch of songs, wrote and recorded a batch of songs. Did a couple of videos for that, and then the process happened all over again. And we did the same thing. And now we have just about, we have an album's worth of material that we're going to be releasing in 2026.
Yeah, I've been digging all the
Yeah,
songs that I've heard so far, and I was gonna ask,
yeah.
when the album might be out.
I was told actually. I mean, I've been. It's kind of it's kind of a moving target. It seems and
Yeah.
last I heard it was like September or October, and we've got a few days left in October, so it's safe to say it's not coming out in October. But I would say probably like first quarter of 2026.
Yeah.
It's pretty much done. I think like I'm pretty sure that all the mixing and mastering is finished, and like all the recordings are complete. There's been stuff floating around about like artwork and things like that, like getting the credits, getting everybody's credits and thank yous and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's getting close.
I mean, the process of putting music out now is so weird too, because it's just like, is there still an incentive to do like a whole album, or is it better to do EPs or just like singles? And I don't know, like I'm still one of these people that's like buying CDs and like copying them over to my computer because I can't like ethically get around the idea of doing streaming because it pays pennies on the dollar.
I was literally debating this last night with another band, with the Patriarchs in Black that I'm involved in, and we're putting out a covers record in January. It's all covers, and we like going back and forth about that. And it was it's like, why don't we just do an EP? And just like and then we got into the whole thing about why they don't do EPs and why it's getting into the like what goes into sausages.
Yeah.
And with each release, I'm finding it harder and harder. Like where I should be understanding things better, I still feel like a dinosaur.
Yeah.
And at times, I mean, I love the whole creative process, and I love recording and tracking and stuff like that, and playing and getting together with the guys and stuff. But it really does seem like it's unfortunate. Like you got to kind of treat it like a hobby. Like it's not something. It's not like, oh well, maybe you can maybe you know make a living doing this.
Yeah.
It's not. It's impossible now.
Yeah, because even playing out live now, like, someone's taking a cut of your ticket sales. Now there's like, I think especially with Live Nation venues, they're taking a cut of the merch now, from what I've heard. And
People have been taking cuts of merch. I mean, since I've been touring,
yeah,
and I look at it now. I've been touring for over 30 years at this point, which I can't believe, but it's a fact. And since my first tour, somebody's always been taking a cut of your merch. It just wasn't to the extent where usually it was like like a venue would take it. They would take, like, it started out, they take maybe like 5%, 10%, just a little something. Now they're taking sometimes up to like like over 25%, 35%.
yeah,
So the only thing, like in most bands, like especially, you put a band like Sun Don't Shine on the road, not going to make a lot of money. So the one thing that you could make money doing this, they're going into that now too, which it's been, like I said, it's been going on for years. Just the percentages got higher and higher and higher. Live Nation, I believe they have a thing, like some of their venues, they don't take a percentage. So they're kind of like the good guys
Yeah.
sometimes. But it's something. It's one of those things where it's like, you know, it's one of those tangible assets. So of course they're going to want to. They're going to want a piece of it.
Yeah. No, it's like
So
how
the one
many like
thing,
deals with the devil do you have to like sign at this point to like have your dream, you
exactly, and
know?
it's a lot of times, it's very discouraging, and it's like, well, why keep doing this? It's like it's like, trying to fix a failed relationship.
Yeah.
It's not going to get better. It's just going to get worse.
Yeah.
But being a hopeless romantic, you're like, oh, today will be different. Today we're gonna, this show will be different. And it's, I mean, it's, I guess I got a hair up my ass today. But I could totally be Debbie Downer about the whole thing right now.
Yeah.
Because like every aspect of it, especially, like there's a different. I'm looking at it through a different, you know, lens. I'm looking at it as an older guy. I'm not 21 years old anymore. It's like, yeah, I'm going to get in the van and I'm going to go do it, and I don't care if I come home with $200.
Yeah.
I was living with my mother then. I could do that. you know, I could disappear for a month and not make any money, and it wouldn't be like, all right, well, whatever. Still got a roof over my head. Mom's still making dinner. I'm good.
Yeah.
But now, I'm an old man. I got the grays, and I got a family, and I got responsibilities. Once responsibilities creep into your life, it changes everything. And
Yeah.
and then you start paying attention to, hey, did I make any money tonight? And then you got to go home to your family and say, oh, yeah, well, yeah, I know I was gone for a month, but didn't make anything. It's like, well, what the hell were you doing for a month? I had a
They've
lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've got friends who've told me about like, sometimes when they've been on tours, especially like earlier on with their bands, there's days where you're just like sleeping in the van and eating cold SpaghettiOs out of a can, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and then, like I said, as you get older and like, you still kind of like, toughen it in a van and stuff like that. It's like, well, like the money that you would spend on like, beer or that can of SpaghettiOs, like, I got to go home with something.
Yeah.
It just seems like, like I said, as you get older, there's more responsibility. So there's more on the line, and it's like, you can't just, you can't just be, carefree,
Yeah.
and it's one of those, like, you're in, it's a really tough position to be in, because if you thought about it rationally, you would not do it. You just, I got to get another job. It's not worth it. The job doesn't pay. I need to get another job.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you keep doing it.
Yeah. When like I think about this when I think about how I thought about music when I was just like a kid in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and like middle school and high school, where it's like, especially in my early teens, there was always this kind of thing where everyone just at that age you think, oh, these guys have a record deal and they're touring. They must have a ton of money. But then you get older and it's like, no, like unless they like got like huge, they were still working jobs when they weren't on tour, you know?
Yeah, I guess it's, kind of, like back then, it's the same thing. Like the professional sports, baseball players, football players, when the season was over, they all went and got jobs.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like when I was a teenager. Obviously, I'm a little bit older than you. I was a teenager in the '80s, and like even then I don't know how much money was being thrown around back then, but people were definitely going to concerts more. And it's like, like I would go see Iron Maiden at the Nassau Coliseum, right? They would play the Nassau Coliseum. They play the Meadowlands in New Jersey, and then they play like the Garden in New York City. You got three shows, three arena shows. They're running around. They have a gold record, and they're filling arenas. They're doing arena tours, filling them up, selling them out. Legendary. This and that. And then when our time came, where we were on the road, and now Type O has a gold record under our belt. We're not playing arenas, dude.
Yeah.
We're playing the Norva. we're playing the what was it, the Boathouse in what was that, in like Virginia Beach, Norfolk,
Oh yeah,
Norfolk.
yeah.
Yeah.
I so when I lived in Virginia for a little bit, and
Where do you live
you
now?
I live in Chicago now. So
I
I'm from Kentucky originally,
we
and then I came
we
up
were
here, then I
playing.
was there, and then back here.
We had a gold record under our belt, and we were playing the Riv and the Vic.
Yeah,
Yeah, we weren't playing the Rosemont Horizon. We
yeah,
weren't playing American Airlines Arena. And back then, like like that musical, I guess that generation, that graduating group before us, those are the rooms that they were playing. And I don't know how they did it. And then now it was now, like I said, now we have a gold record, and it was not what I thought it was going to be. you know, you know,
Well, this is like the
and
fourth band that you've had with Kenny, not counting, that tour that you played with Danzig together on, but like what's kind of kept you all playing music together for all these years since like I guess what 92, 93 when you joined Typo?
yeah, but I've been playing with Kenny since I'm like 17 years old.
Oh, okay.
We met as teenagers, and we were in a band together before Typo started, and then he joined Typo and then he joined Typo, and then we didn't play together for a few years. And then when Sal left Typo, and I was coming in for an audition. Kenny helped me prepare for my audition. We were going to the studio together and working out the songs and stuff so that I would be better prepared than whoever else was coming, to audition. But we've, since the day we met, we've always been best friends.
Yeah.
And I joined Typo, and now we go on this whole journey together, through, being in Typo Negative together. And then he's starting to, write his own songs again. And then I just started playing with them again. That was it. And,
Yeah.
like I said, we grew up together. We went through, all these experiences together in Typo Negative, and we've always remained, very close friends, even after Typo. So it wasn't, like playing together was not a business decision. We just, when we weren't playing, we were always hanging out together. So it just continued. There isn't any, uh, like plan. We like playing together, and we play well together.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that always stuck out to me with
Yeah.
Typo, especially when I would watch like After Dark or Symphony for the Devil with the backstage footage and everything, is that like there was a noticeable like camaraderie between you guys. Like you were saying, it wasn't just like purely a business decision. Like you could tell that you guys were like-minded and, probably enjoyed being around
We
each other. Probably not like forever on tour, but like.
Oh no, there were lots of times where we all wanted to kill each other, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's probably
and
every band too, though.
yeah, like with anyone, and I'm sure, like, Kenny gets fed up with me, and I get annoyed with him, and but we have, like, yeah, with Typo, there definitely was a dynamic that there was a certain sense of camaraderie. Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Even
Yeah.
though, as much as, like I said, like, we couldn't stand each other. We would, the two, like before, we'd talk shit about each other all the time. But like, it was the thing, I could talk shit about them. You can't.
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like the core of like brotherhood though.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do, with upbringing and where we come from, and we literally come from the area in Brooklyn, we literally, even with me replacing Sal, we were all literally walking distance from each other's homes.
Yeah.
I lived like a half a mile away from Peter and Josh.
Yeah.
Brooklyn's in a grid. Like they lived on Avenue K, I lived on Avenue J, and the numbers, right? The went east to west, letters, and north and south with the numbers. They were on East 18th Street, right? And I was on East 37th. So it was just
Yeah.
a few blocks. I used to play hockey around the corner from where Peter and Josh lived. I used to go, there was like a hockey rink, and I used to go play roller hockey over there all the time. I was in the neighborhood all the time. And Kenny lived off of like Kings Highway and Nostrand Avenue, which
Yeah.
I could easily walk to either of their houses. I used to walk to Kenny's house before I got a car. before,
Yeah.
Kenny helped me get my driver's license.
Yeah. When did you guys meet Slitzy, the tour manager who was on those
Uh,
documentaries?
Jeremy was our light guy. He wasn't our tour manager. He was the lighting
Oh,
director,
okay.
and I knew Jeremy from our manager at the time. Our manager Ken Creedy. He was working for Ken Creedy, and then I would see him, like Ken managed a couple of other managed some smaller bands. He was trying to break some other bands from Brooklyn and stuff like that. And Ken would have those bands open up for Typo Negative, and then we'd see Jeremy, helping those bands out. And then one tour, we start a tour, and then I start seeing Jeremy around us. And I'm like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "Well, I'm working for you." I was like, "Doing what?" And he's like, "I'm here as an assistant, to help, with whatever." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "What do you do?" And he had no purpose. I'm convinced that our manager put him out there just to annoy us,
Yeah.
just to stir shit up.
Well, yeah, because there's like the clip on Symphony for the Devil where he's like following you around in a golf cart with a bullhorn, just
Yeah,
going, Johnny
yeah,
Kelly has a
yeah.
big
He's
penis over and
right.
over.
Yes, yes. That was like his primary function. That's what he was there to do, was just to torture us. And our light guy that we had at the time, our light guy Neg, saw that Jeremy really wasn't doing much. He was just around, and he, our light guy used him to help him set up the lights for the show. He's like, "I'm going to put you to work and see you're not doing anything over there. You're going to come and help me out." And so Neg taught him how to do lights. And then after a while, after I guess a couple of years or whatever, Neg stopped working with us. Actually, he got off the road. He stopped touring and kind of passed the torch on to Jeremy. And then Jeremy became our lighting director. So then he was a guy that would give us a hard time, and he was doing lights, but at least he had an actual title at this point.
Yeah.
And that's how it started. But Jeremy went to school for film and stuff like that, so he played a big part in helping us put those home videos together, putting the footage together and stuff like that. So he became a very important part of our universe.
Yeah.
There were many times, for years, our tour manager would be like, you have to let me fire these guys."
Now, I remember showing After Dark to a friend in high school back in like, I guess it was 2002 or 2003. And he was just like really confused for the first half of it. And he's like, is this supposed to be like Goth Spinal Tap? Like he didn't understand that you all were a real band. And I think it's because there's just like one, the music is actually like really good, obviously, but then the way that After Dark is produced, it feels like it is just sort of like a mockumentary. Like all of your interview segments have like banjo playing over it, and you're
Yeah,
saying things that you're the only person being serious in the interview segments.
but that's that's us making fun of each other,
Yeah.
and it was yeah, it was the intention was for it to be lighthearted and to show the contrast of, but that's like that's the stuff that's what it's really like.
Yeah. I know my favorite
You
running
know,
joke is Josh like crouched under the bridge and the first shot
yeah,
says has not shit in 2 weeks and then it's like
yeah,
every 10 minutes you get still has not shit.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What did Kenny used to call him? Like the fecal comedian. So it really was. It was a lot of it was stuff that we found funny.
Yeah.
And for the most part, we were clowns. We were always like joking, and it was a very like everybody had like the same kind of like cynical, self-deprecating sense of humor,
Yeah.
and we had the ability to laugh at ourselves, but it was
Yeah.
much more fun to laugh at somebody else,
Yeah, and I mean
especially
like
when it's
that
at their expense. That
that
was
I
fun.
think is like a big part of why I always as a fan just like connected with Peter's lyrics especially because they could be like very dark and gloomy, but there was always this sort of like um self-deprecating, like tongue-in-cheek sort of humor to a lot of it too.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And a lot of it was tongue in cheek, and a lot of it, a lot of times it would go over a lot of people's heads, and especially overseas. Like trying to explain, sarcasm, you know, to people from another country that don't really understand, that don't really get like the linguistics and things like that. And it's like, well, what did you mean by this? And it's like, oh, wow, how do I explain this?
Yeah.
Like where do I start with this? It was a joke.
Yeah.
World Coming Down wasn't really so much of a humorous record. Like a
Yeah.
little bit of a lot of the sarcasm came back with Life is Killing Me, but World Coming Down is definitely like the darkest record in the catalog.
Yeah.
That's yeah, that
I
that
mean, like
was that
those
was
two albums and Dead Again, like they came along at the right periods for me that they got me through a lot of stuff too, though.
well, that's cool. That's great to hear. It's great to hear that it was like that it had a positive effect on somebody. Like those records, they were killing us. they, they were taking like chunks of our lives away that like that we'll never get back.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like that Danzig tour that you mentioned that you and Kenny did. Like, I've seen you with
Mm,
Danzig a few times since Peter passed away, but I think the
right.
tour that you and Kenny were both on was prior to Dead Again, right? When he was in like either Rikers or the psych ward.
This was he wasn't locked up all that long.
Oh, okay.
He was there for a few weeks. Like they picked him up on a he got picked up on a parole violation, and then they kept him in Rikers. Like he got mandated to rehab, but they weren't going to release him, and like they held him until a bed opened up at a rehab center. So he was there. I'm trying to remember, maybe like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, which I'd imagine feels like forever when you're locked up, like being
Yeah.
in jail. It can't be fun. But around that time, no, actually, we were working on Dead Again when Kenny did that tour.
Oh, okay.
We were writing it. We were writing the record, writing and rehearsing and stuff, and because we did when Kenny did that tour, that was the first tour that Steve Zing did playing bass for Danzig. And we did our rehearsals before we went out to California to rehearse with Glenn. We got together a bunch of times at Typo's rehearsal studio in Rockaway, and we were working on that was the room that we were in when we were working on Dead Again. So, but yeah, I think like we just took a break because we were
Yeah.
just writing. There wasn't any deadline or anything like that. We weren't on a strict schedule where we had deadlines or anything. So we just took a break. I was going away. I was going away with Glenn, and then And then yeah, right before that tour started, Glenn had let go of the guitar player and the bass player that were in the band, and then we brought in Kenny and Zing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was yeah. So I guess that was like 2006,
Yeah,
right?
because I
And
remember
then
around
Dead
that
Again
time
came out in
Peter had like freaked people
2007.
out
Yeah,
with the practical joke on the website too, where there was like
that
a
was like a year.
gravestone.
That was like a year. That was like a year or two before.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I never really got to the bottom of that. I remember seeing it, and I remember, like my phone blowing up, like what happened, this and that, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I went to the homepage and I see like the headstone. I was like, "Oh, Peter learned how to use the internet." Peter and Josh are playing with Photoshop today.
There was one thing that I've always wondered about since
Yeah,
2007, and I can't remember if it was in an article that was in either Decibel or Terrorizer. But you had said, I think that Dead Again was the first typo album that you had actually like played on. So I didn't
yeah,
know if I like
yeah,
misread that or if it was actually drum
yeah.
machines on the previous three.
Well, the other records we did everything MIDI. So we had samplers and stuff like that, and I played all the stuff like on keyboards,
Oh, okay.
like that. We didn't. It wasn't like a drum machine per se, like we just like we. I put everything in, by hand, playing drums on a keyboard, and that record, Dead Again, we did everything that was live. That was us in a room, hit record, no click tracks, no nothing like that. Just like the four of us, playing. I was in like, my little cubicle thing, and Josh was like right next to me, and Peter was off. I remember him off over there, and then Kenny was further away, all in the big room at Systems 2.
Yeah. No, I know that
And
album definitely has like it's kind of like a warmer, like a more organic sound to it than the other ones, I think.
it's a little more jammy.
Yeah.
There's it seemed, I guess, like, for typo, there was a bunch of, it was a little more jamming going on, and it kind of I think it was like a culmination of everything the band had done up to that point.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we were doing something like, new, or like, really going in a, like a new direction or anything like that. But it was kind of like there were songs on the record, and I could say, oh, this would have, been more appropriate. This would have worked on Slow, Deep and Hard, or like, Bloody Kisses, or Life is Killing Me, like stuff like that. Like it had little identifiers from each of those records to me.
Yeah.
And but it did seem like there was a little bit more jamming in it, more guitar solos, more keyboard solos, like extended stuff where it was, things like that. And but at the time, I thought it was a pretty solid. It was a good effort for a band that had been around for like 18 years.
Yeah.
It wasn't something where the band was, all right, whatever, we've been around for a while. Let's just put something together and use it, the vehicle to get back on tour.
Yeah. I mean, I got to see you
You
guys
know,
on
it,
the tour for that album, and it's still one of like my top five shows that I've ever been to. Like it was Bogarts in Cincinnati on April Fool's Day in 2007. And I remember you all had like the audience response like cue lights.
oh, yeah, the you
So there's like
suck and
applause, yeah.
applause. Yeah,
And there was
yeah.
just chicken dance music playing for like 15 minutes before
I, I tell my friends about the chicken dance.
and the lights finally dim and everyone gets excited that the show's about to start, but they don't
That
realize
was
they're supposed to be responding to these lights, and then the lights come back up and the chicken dance music goes on
it
again.
was it was it was the chicken dance for 30 minutes straight. And that was that idea came from Jeremy and our sound guy Mark Allen, who was he was like the perfect partner for Jeremy. The two of them together were very chaotic. I mean, extremely funny, and we loved it. And it was their idea to come up with the chicken dance. Now the chicken dance is kind of funny and kitschy for like, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
This was 30 minutes of it. And they would let the song end, and the audience would think, all right, the band's coming on. And then the chicken dance would start again. And then it would get to the point where they would turn all the house lights down and everything. And they were like, all right. And the crowd would get all excited and they'd play the chicken dance again. And then I remember going out, like poking my head out from the side of the stage, and I'd hear people screaming, "Fucking kill me! Stop!" And our tour manager at the time was like, they're like, you may want to, think about, rethink this whole chicken dance thing. There was one show, I forget where it was, but there was one show, and the the promoter was like, people are like, going to the the window, the will call, like, the ticket office. They're asking for refunds. They want their money back. They want to leave. Which of course was like, that's what's happening. Got to keep doing it.
I mean, it goes back to the whole thing on like the origin of the feces, the fake live album where
Yeah.
Peter's whole thing is like $15. You paid $15 American to see this shit. Who's the real jerk here?
But the best, like the funniest part of that is when he announces this is our last song, and then the crowd actually gets excited. This is going to be our last song. They're like, finally. and, and the chicken dance is like an extension of that.
Yeah. With next
And
year marking like 30 years of October Rust, what stands out to you the most from that period of the band's history?
today, I have a thing coming up here in Texas. I'm taking part in a breast cancer fundraiser, and the way that they're doing it, I participated in it a number of times throughout the years. Like whenever I'm home, it's a whole thing. It's all about drummers. The girl April who organizes the event. She's a breast cancer survivor, and she plays. She's a drummer, and she plays in bands down here and stuff. And so she does this thing every November, and she calls it a breast cancer can stick it. And this year, she's doing it. It's like a clinic. So I'm going to be doing like a drum clinic, and play a couple of songs, and then do question and answer thing. People can play with me, like that kind of thing. And so I've been going over stuff. I'm going to play do like play alongs to a couple of typo songs. And I've been listening to this stuff a lot. And I was like thinking about, like, this morning I was working on this software now where you can extract instruments from songs. So I load in a typo song, and it takes all the drums out. And so I'm going to be playing along to it in this clinic, and working, like setting up these tracks and stuff. And it's like listening to this stuff, and it's, listening to it, like really digging into what's going on. And I've been practicing, in my studio to these songs. I haven't played them in years. And, digging into it, it's the first time, I've really sat down and really analyzed these songs this way. And it's been really weird. And it's weird in the sense of really sitting down and listening to these songs. And I haven't done that since we made them. When any record that we were done, that we finished, whatever, we made a record, whichever one it was like, that's it. I don't ever want to hear it again. Like that kind of thing. It's like, I'm over it. Now I'm going to recover from the trauma that I've endured making this record. and sitting down and listening to it, and it's different. You and I can listen to the same typo song, and I'm going to have a whole different experience than you do. with what you hear. You're hearing it in a different way. I'm hearing it, and it's a reflection, it's a picture, a snapshot of who we were, 30 years ago. And I listen. I'm listening to it. And I could just it takes me right back to being in Josh's studio in his house. I'm like, like sitting there and working on these songs, and like, coming up with the ideas of how we're going to do this, and being in the rehearsal room, like developing the songs and stuff like that, and thinking of, and now it's like it hits you, and it's like, holy shit, it's 30 years ago. And but like, and I hear it when I'm sitting there and I'm studying and analyzing and like relearning it too. And it's like, it takes me right back to being in that room. Not like all the tours that we did and all the shows and like, whatever, getting the gold plaques for that record. None of that shit. It takes right back to that room with like, the four of us are in there. And I remember like, like Peter presenting, like, when we finally got into the rehearsal room, and Peter was showing us the skeleton of what Love You to Death was, and that's hearing the song, like, analyzing the song, studying it, and like, working it out, playing it again, playing along to it and stuff like that. That's what it takes me back to,
Yeah.
Like hearing it for the first time. And it's a very, really weird feeling. Not bad, not bad, a little nostalgic, a little sentimental, but at the same time where it's like, it's funny, like hearing a song and it can take you right back to a certain point in time. Like that's right where you go,
Yeah.
and there's like the journey after the song was written and recorded and put out and stuff. There was a whole lifetime of experiences that go along with that. Like, I can't count how many times. Actually, I did a search recently, and it was like some website where it had the set lists for like every show that
Oh,
we've ever done.
setlist.fm.
I just found it.
Yeah.
I just discovered it last week. And I'm looking at it does a thing, and I mean, a bunch of it is incorrect,
Yeah.
like dates and stuff like that, showing like, like shows that we did with like, Queensryche, they're popping up like a year later, and things like that.
Oh yeah, I think
But
that's all
it
like
showed
fan submitted.
yeah, but the culmination of it was like, I think I've done like I did like 1,000 shows with Typo Negative. Like the band
Yeah.
played over 1,000 shows in its career, in its lifespan. We did over 1,000 shows, and working on like, like studying Love You to Death. But the first thing I thought of was being in Josh's house working on it. Not like anything else, not like, like the 300 shows that we did, like, in support of the October Russ album, the first, like, working on it, like hearing Phil's back, like, like hearing the patterns and the drum fills that were played, like, that were done to it and stuff like that. And then thinking about being in Josh's house. It's not anything else. And to me, like, in a sentimental way, it was really powerful. And like, of course, like, like hearing Peter's voice, like, hearing Peter sing, and, like things like that. Like I've seen, throughout the years, I've seen tons of like, live footage of us and stuff like that. But this was like, this hit me a little bit different today.
Yeah.
You
No, I
know?
mean that's like just like really wild to hear too, because like the touring cycle for that album would have had to have been nuts too, because that had like an Ozfest on it. It had the tour where you all got Pantera banned from Las Vegas for several years with the toilet paper.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. At that point, like, like with like when I first joined the band, we weren't anybody. The band, like the band had like, Slow Deep and Hard came out. Right? Slow Deep and Hard came out. They did like 2 weeks of touring in the U.S. and then they did
I think it was like
they
Bloody
did some
Kisses
shows.
and
And
then yeah.
well, yeah, they did that. I mean, they played locally. They
Yeah.
would play locally, quite a bit. And but as far as like like the rest of the country and the rest of the world knowing the band and stuff, there really wasn't any. There was hardly any touring. They did 2 weeks in the States on the first record, and then they went to Europe for a couple of weeks, and that was it. And then Bloody Kisses came out. My Bloody Kisses came out. Sal left the band. I joined the band after the record came out in '93. And then after I joined the band, we played a little bit locally, and we didn't go on tour until '94,
Yeah.
like the winter of '94, February. So the record had been out like 6 months before we ever did any touring for the record. For the record, we weren't promoting it, and it wasn't that kind of band. The intention was just to play locally, and the band had a record deal with
Yeah.
a tiny label in Holland.
Yeah, because
And
I
then
remember reading that
finally we
y'all got
just
traction off of the Mortal Kombat soundtrack too, from like Blood and Fire being on there.
at that point when that came out, we had already been on the road for a while.
Oh, okay.
Like the band had a little bit of value at that point. And yeah, we had been, I think, like we had been on tour with Motley Crue by that point. I think that the Mortal Kombat record came out in '95,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, we had been on the road for a year at that point.
Oh, okay.
And but yeah, like when we first started touring, the band was, safe to say the band was an unknown band. The band had no value. That first tour that we did, like it did okay in like Chicago and Detroit, like the stuff that we play in the Northeast and stuff. But when we started getting out west, the whiskey, we played the whiskey. That was a good show. It was a good turnout. It didn't sell out, but it was a strong turnout. But there were other places, we were playing in Las Vegas, we were doing like 50 people. It was an unknown, you're playing like the Huntridge Theater, and there's nobody there, and there was a lot of that. And not until the record was out for Bloody Kisses had been out for at least a year, or about a year, when it finally started getting a little bit of airplay on the radio. Like we made 2 videos for. I was in the band for 2 weeks. We shot a video for Christian Woman. It couldn't get played anywhere. You know, they shot a video for Black Number One before I joined the band. Maybe got played on Headbangers Ball. Maybe a handful of times. That was it.
Yeah.
But it was like the band literally had no value, and it was it wasn't until a year later, after we started touring with Motley Crue in the summer of '94, then it was we're starting to claw our way into a couple of small radio stations and stuff. And then not until the end of '94 where the band was actually starting to sell records.
Yeah.
you know
That's like
that's
Karate
when
era,
it kind
right?
of yeah, that we did the tour with Karabi, yeah. And
Yeah.
that was a bust. That was terrible for them. Great
Yeah.
for us, because playing to 800 people in Pensacola or whatever, Jacksonville, one of those Florida cities, playing to 800 people. Bad for them. Great for Typo Negative, because when Typo played in Pensacola, there was 12 people,
Yeah.
literally. Yeah, I remember playing in Pensacola. So it was bad for them, great for us, and that was the that was the springboard. That was the tour where people started noticing, started taking notice, and then it started building from there.
Yeah.
And
This,
and then at that point we were on the road constantly. We were on the road for Bloody Kisses for 18 months, and then we came home. Right, that tour was finished. We were home. We wrote, demoed, recorded October Rust in 6 months. Pretty impressive.
yeah.
Like looking back on it, it was like, well, wow, I can't believe that actually happened. But yeah, 6 months later, we were on tour, and now we were on tour. We were on tour with Ozzy Osbourne. We
Yeah.
weren't playing the 12 people in Pensacola. We were on tour with Ozzy. And Josh was on the phone. This was, before the internet had really, had taken a hold on, humanity, on everything. Josh would be on the phone in the hotel. This is before cell phones, before the internet. Josh would be on the phone in the hotel room, uh, given, direction to the engineer in Brooklyn. Do this, put this here, like, do this to this song and blah, blah, blah. And they would send out, they would like FedEx, cassettes from the studio for us to listen to hear the progress on how like the mixing was going and, things like that. We were doing it on the road, but it wasn't, it was a whole different way of doing things remotely. And yeah, and then we were out on the October Rust record. We were out on tour for 14 months on that one. So like 18 months, six, that's 24 months. That's 2 years, 2 years, 3 years, 3.5 years before we finally slowed down and took a break. And 3.5 years of just go, 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 go.
Yeah. What's it like looking
And
back all these years later and seeing like on Instagram or like other platforms like that, where around this time of year, people post things like it's October Rust season and the album just has like that legacy now.
it's looking back at it now, yeah, it's cool. I can't believe it. I can't believe that that the thing that we did has that kind of staying power. Because when you were in it, and as we were in it, as we're doing it, it's like we're just going by the seat of our pants, and it's like we're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And every day was like, you'd wake up and be like, is today the end? Is this where it all falls apart? You know, which is really, that's how we always felt every time a tour ended. It was like, well, I guess I have to go get a job now. Because this can't survive. This has
Yeah.
to be finished. And that's what it always felt like, because it always felt like there was always this uneasy feeling and stuff where it was like, this is not going to last. This really has a high probability of being over tomorrow. So everything was always, you were going as if this was, every show was like, this is the last show we're ever going to play.
Yeah.
That's what was always in the back of your mind. And then something would happen, something else would happen and be like, well, live to see another day. Oh, how about that? Check that out. Just when you thought it was over, something else happened. But it was true, because it always felt like the wheels were falling off the bus. And there was always like this, there was never like this sense of, I guess, for lack of a better word, there was never any security in it. You're only as good as your last show. You're only as good as your last record. Who knows? Maybe, we could get dropped. If this record doesn't do well, they could drop us. Maybe we'll never get another record deal. Who knows? Like, it was always, everything was always, this is it. It's over.
Yeah. Well, there's been rumors going around lately about possible plans for a tribute or for like a new live album or something to that effect. Is there anything that you can say about that yet?
There is a live record in the works. Like, we're going through the motions with that and stuff. It'll probably come out some point next year. Like, I think early next year. Early next year apparently is going to be really busy.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's like, it's hard now, like, for us, like, to, I mean, it would be great to have like a whole bunch of stuff to, like, to release, to, to something new for fans and stuff like that. And but there just really isn't a lot of stuff. So, like, we were able to get our hands on a good recording. And so, like, we've been, like, like, approving mixes and, stuff, doing artwork and, stuff like that. And so we're able to get, we were able to get the masters for a show we did, and we're releasing it. And I don't want to give too many details, but we're working on something. And as far as like doing shows and stuff like that, a lot of it has just been a lot of people are reaching out to us, saying, "Hey, are you interested in doing something? Whatever, blah blah blah." Like there's a lot of interest in the band now. But to say that we're, it would be premature to say like, yeah, we're talking about doing something, or there's something on the books. So, we got something, planned, or we don't have anything planned or anything. It's just that people are now, and the conversation keeps getting brought to us. So but no, we haven't gotten into details. We haven't decided on doing shows, or we have a singer picked out, or a bass player, or like any of that. None of the conversations have gotten that far. A lot of it is people inquiring if we're interested in doing something.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's like it comes up a lot now, which is pretty weird. It's like I said, just when you think that, all right, well, yeah, that's it, whatever. And now it's like, the band's popularity seems like keeps growing,
Yeah, because it's
which is
kind of got
great.
like cult status at this point.
Yeah, it kind of it kind of, I mean, I can't say, yeah, this is the reason why, or, I don't have the answers for it, but it seems like, the band still has a like a like a level of relevancy, and I mean, I think it's great. It's great. It's great to see, like running into younger fans and stuff, or, people, well, I was too young to see the band play live. Like, I just got into the band, like a couple of months ago, and it changed my life, that kind of stuff. It's great to hear that, and great to meet people, and to see that the band still has that ability to reach people.
Yeah.
That never gets old. It's like it doesn't. Like why would I have a problem with that?
Yeah, speaking of live
Yeah,
shows,
yeah.
will we be able to see Sun Don't Shine on the road once the album comes out next year?
There's talk of trying to do something. Like that's not. That's a different situation compared to typo. Like
Yeah.
Sun Don't Shine. Regardless of the pedigree that the band has, starting out, it's still a new band.
Yeah.
So they're going to say, well, all right, well, whatever, new band, okay, whatever, you got so and so, all right, we'll give you this much. Now does that mean we can afford to do a bunch of shows or anything? We may not be able to, and like that. But the goal is to do shows. We want to play out live. We want to do some stuff. Whether it's, I don't know if it's going to be touring, or if it's going to be a couple of shows here and there, or maybe get on a couple of festivals or something. That we're but that it's too soon to say. But the plan, the goal is to get the band out there.
Yeah. And I know that you're in Quiet Riot too. Where can fans catch you with them?
I'm I've been joking all week. Yeah, I'm playing Coachella this week. No, but we really are. We're playing in Coachella.
Yeah.
So I'm not lying. No, there's a casino in Coachella, and we're playing that this weekend. Usually, yeah, usually Quiet Riot's been keeping me really busy, and it's been great, and it's been a lot of fun. It's great. Playing with the guys. Got Rudy Sarzo back in the band now the last few years, and we this year wasn't as busy, but still pretty busy. For that, for those kinds of bands, playing in those places and stuff like that. It's been busy, and we're, yeah, playing Coachella next. I'm flying out tomorrow.
Yeah. No, it was really cool seeing that Rudy got to play Back to the Beginning earlier this year too.
Yeah, I thought I thought that was great, and like before the whole thing happened, I was a little skeptical about it. To me, like initially, the way that everything was being announced, and everybody that was involved, I was like, oh, it's gotten, it's very Hollywood.
Yeah.
but then seeing it and stuff like that, it was done really well. I thought it was really cool, and it was great to see Rudy there. Shocked to see Jakey Lee playing with them. Jakey Lee making an appearance. It would have been great to see Tommy Aldridge there, and Bob Daisley. I mean, obviously, knowing the history of everything there, I knew Bob Daisley was not going to be invited. But it would have been great to see everybody put all that shit aside and just get together one last time, like, and, say goodbye, let the fans say goodbye, you know,
Yeah.
and just have everybody involved. I mean, shit, even get Carmine Appice in there. And who's the other guy? I always forget his name, the guy that played bass in Ozzy's band. And he would flip his bass over and he had a cheese grater on the back of his bass. And
Oh,
he
the
just
guy that
like
was in
scraped this.
Wasp. It was Don something. He
Yes.
was in Wasp before that. And the
Yes.
last time that
Yes.
Ozzy saw him, he was homeless.
It would have been great.
Yeah.
I mean, whether homeless or not, like whatever. It would have. It would. Oh man, I forget his name now. Don. Shit. Now I got to look it up.
Does his last name start with like a B, I think? I can't remember his last
I
name either,
couldn't
and I was
tell
just
you.
reading about him in Ozzy's like last book this morning. I just remember Don.
Hang on, I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, because
Uh,
he would grate the skin off of his knuckles during the show, and he wore white jeans, and like there would be the blood all over it by the end.
yeah, yeah. I remember seeing it in magazines when I was a kid. I was like, oh shit, this guy's nuts. Don
And
Costa.
apparently, yeah. No, apparently he was that way off
Oh,
stage too. Like, I think there's a story in Ozzy's last book about how they had gone to see ZZ Top on an off date, and at one
right.
point during the set, you could just kind of see the stage moving, but it wasn't in any sort of rhythm with the band. And so ZZ Top's tour manager like looks under the stage, and Don is under there just like ramming some lady.
Yeah, right in that book, right? Wasn't he? He was like a little even too out there for Ozzy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, looking back on it, looking back now, and then of course, with Ozzy passing away, I thought it was great that they were able to put that together the way they did. And the way that they did it was done, very tastefully and stuff. And it was great seeing Bill Ward play with Sabbath again. And I'm really glad that he was able to be there and to, close out that chapter, like to be that end, whatever the end of the book.
Yeah. Like I
I
was
was really happy for them for that.
yeah, because like I mean I had skipped the last Sabbath tour because I was bummed that Bill wouldn't be part of it. And like in retrospect, I do kind of wish that I had gone. But I got to see them like a couple of times in the 2000s with like the full original lineup. And like I got to see Ozzy solo in like '07 and in 2018. I guess like a few months before they had to start canceling everything because of his neck injury. And like,
Yeah.
I'm glad that I got to see all of that because I mean, Sabbath is probably my favorite band of all time.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely mine. Sabbath and Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been going to see Ozzy since I'm like 15 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
Like the first time I saw Ozzy was on Bark at the Moon with Motley Crue opening up. Yeah,
Yeah. No, that would have been an
and
insane tour.
it was. I mean, like being. I'm pretty sure I was like 15 at the time, and
Yeah.
it was. It's like, oh my god, it's
Was
like
that like Shout at the
it.
Doom or not Shout at the Devil or like Theater of Pain?
Yes, yeah, yeah. Shout
Yeah.
at the devil. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I saw Motley Crue after that tour. Then they started headlining small theaters on their own. And they came back just a couple of months later. They were headlining. I saw them at the Beacon Theater in New York with Rat opening up.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like at that point, like when I was like, like 15, going to concerts and stuff, and it changed my whole trajectory.
Yeah. Wait,
And
I've had you for
I
about
don't
an
know.
hour now. I don't want to take up like your whole evening, but
It's
is there
cool.
anything?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah,
this is fun. Talking about
yeah.
Ozzy.
You know, I just want to be mindful of your time because
Yeah,
yeah.
I appreciate it.
But yeah, no, I think like that era of music is like the first things that I ever remember hearing when I was like 3 or 4. Because when my dad would come to pick me up as a kid, you know, on the weekends or whatever, um, it was like Pump era Aerosmith. Like that was my first like favorite album when I was like 4. Like knew all the lyrics to it. Like in
Yeah.
retrospect, it's funny thinking of like a 4-year-old running around singing like Fine, but
Yeah,
um,
but I was, that was, like with you in my house, I'm sitting there singing "Bitch" from the Stones on Sticky Fingers, uh, stuff like that. And it's like my dad, the same thing. My dad had a profound influence on what I wound up doing in my life. Even though my dad was not a musician, and but he was the music was always in the house, and I was always like you know taking his records and going into my room and listening to them. And it's like this. It's a cute story now. Like now, you know. Uh, we didn't have any money. We were barely getting by. But my dad always had records. And I remember asking him, like, I was like, at the time, I was like, Dad, I think it's time, get an allowance. Trying to get an allowance, trying to get money out of him. And he was, he suggested, he turned around. He goes, "How about this?" He goes, "For every week that you go, I'll give you one of my records. You can have one of my records." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's great." I remember the first record I got from him was the Rolling Stones, "Through the Past Darkly," the octagon shaped record.
yeah.
And from there, it was always like listening to his records and all that stuff. I mean, it's all classic rock now, but it was whatever current, at the time. And he was the one that brought home "Kiss Alive," and that changed everything. It was no longer like whatever my dad was into listening to records and like trying to emulate your father and stuff like that. It wasn't anything like that. This was, oh shit. And then that just, it literally changed everything, and I just got completely consumed with Kiss. And that carried on until shit now. It's still it's still it's like they get my money all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't pass that on to my kids, even though my kids are aware of Kiss. Like they're aware of it. And there's like my stepdaughter called me the night Ace Frehley died, and she was like, "I'm calling to check up on you. Are you okay? Are you okay?" I was like, "Oh, it's sweet." But yeah, she, like it's so they like my kids know like the impact that Kiss had on me, but they didn't really like they didn't get it.
Yeah.
They're aware of it, but they don't like they it didn't get really passed down to the generation. But my brother and I like we're still always talking about it, and stuff. And I'm always like even Patriarchs in Black, we're covering a bunch of Kiss songs all the time and stuff. It's like reliving my childhood.
How did you feel about the Unmasked era?
I saw them on the Animal Ice tour, and I remember liking that record, and I loved this. I thought the show was great, at that time, and Wasp was opening up too, so that was like even the extra bonus because I was a huge Wasp fan.
Yeah.
I loved Wasp. Yeah, and they were out touring on that first record, so you had Wasp and Kiss It. I think I saw them at the Meadowlands in New Jersey.
When I was in college, there was a bar near the University of Louisville. It was like a dive bar, the Mag Bar, and I used to get them to unplug their jukebox every now and then because I would just go in there and program back to back to back, just Animal over and over again.
Yeah, that first Wasp record. I mean, I know for me, it's got plenty of staying power. I could listen to it all the time. You know, it's just to me, it was just that great.
Yeah.
And uh, but yeah, like like with Kiss, like a little bit, when they started getting into Hot in the Shade and Crazy Nights and stuff like that, it was hard to. I mean, it was hard to like Dynasty, and I
Yeah.
was only I was only 11 years old.
Yeah.
And
This might
you
be
know,
blasphemy, but Dynasty is one of my favorite Kiss albums.
it has at the time. I mean, I've learned to appreciate it.
Yeah.
And there are definitely some songs on it. I love the song Charisma and stuff.
That's my favorite song off of that
Yeah,
album.
Gene is absolutely amazing on that.
Yeah.
And it's like Sabbath's Born Again record.
Yeah.
Yeah, not their best, but you have to love it.
Yeah.
And I saw them. I saw them on that tour. That was my first concert, seeing them at Madison Square Garden on the Dynasty tour. And so then like I mean, I wasn't really crazy about like like the Hot in the Shade. Like when they started doing the hairband thing, I wasn't really into it. But then they when Eric Singer joined the band after Eric Carr passed away, and then Eric Singer joined the band, they did Revenge. Revenge was a pretty solid record.
Yeah. Revenge is one of my all-time favorite Kiss records.
It's a pretty solid record. I mean, the band, like at that time too. What year did that record come out?
I think it's like 92, 93, somewhere around then.
Yeah, it's been around 20 years at that point.
Yeah.
And they've solid effort from a band that's been around for 20 years. They did the reunion, and then of course I was all about it. And then Typo, we played with them at Donington in '96, and I was freaking in heaven. It was oh shit. We played with Kiss, and then playing Quiet Rights, playing the Kiss Cruise thing in Vegas next month,
Yeah.
which is going to be like it's going to be a whole different thing now because of Ace Frehley passing away. But I'm still looking forward to it. Just anything. At this point in my life, like anything Kiss, I'm just like, yeah, it's awesome. It's great. And like we quite right. We were able to play with Ace a few times and stuff. It was always cool. Shit, playing with Ace Frehley. Yeah,
Yeah.
love it.
Well, yeah, before we sign off of here, is there anything else that you want to put out there for the fans?
No, I mean, like it's just thanks.
Yeah, thanks again for
Yeah,
taking the time today, Johnny.
I appreciate it. It was very last minute. I'm glad that it worked out.
Yeah, I am
It
too.
was a lot of fun.
I've been trying to get either you or Kenny for like I think like a year or so now, and like I was glad something finally lined
Yeah,
up.
yeah, me too. Me too. There's a lot of fun. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.